Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Welcome to episode 133 of the Feeling Good podcast. Today is a special episode where I'm going to be signing off as the host of the podcast. Of course, David will stay on because he's the mainstay of the podcast. But I will be passing the baton to wonderful, beautiful, smart, intelligent, talented Rhonda Barovsky. She doesn't like me saying all those good things about her, but David can attest that it's true.
Absolutely true, and I'm thinking of this as the fabulous, fantastic Fabrice finale, which is a moment of
feeling good.
Sadness, feeling sad, but kind of a very special event for all of us.
Yeah, this may come as a surprise to our listeners, but David and I have been talking about this for a while, and which is why we have been bringing Rhonda up to speed, and we're going to introduce Rhonda in a moment. But I've had a lot of transitions in my life, and I'm moving on to maybe not bigger and better things, but different things. But before we talk about this, Rhonda, our listeners have met you already because you've been part of 2 of our podcasts.
Right. Yes.
But we now need to know a little bit more about you.
You guys always spring stuff on me.
I know.
Scared.
Well, hey, that's the way it works. You got to get used to it.
Yeah, I know. That's true.
Once it's you and David, it's going to be that way. So.
Yep. Well, what do you want to know?
Well, I know that you have a stellar bio, which I could read. But I'd like to let you talk about yourself a little bit, and how did you come to team, and why? I know you came for David, but what did you stay for?
Well, I've worked in forensics for a long time, and in various aspects of that, which is included in the bio in the podcast notes. And in about 2013, I was feeling really burnt out. And I thought I was going to just check my career and open a sandwich shop. And I was actually starting to look for locations to find a shop. And then I got a flyer in the mail that was kind of a seductive, interesting flyer about David Burns' 4-day intensive. And I thought, I'll give this one more try before I give up my entire career. And I went to the intensive, and it just completely changed my life and rejuvenated me. And I met Phyllis Cedars, who's a level 5 team CBT therapist there, and immediately started working with her in a group and individually, and just threw myself as much as I possibly can into learning team. And now my practice is 100% team CBT therapy, and I'm 1,000 times happier.
Yep. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I have to say that team also changed my practice, and I'm eternally grateful to David for this. But David, what made you pick Rhonda out of the many talented people you're surrounded with to be the new host?
It was out of desperation. She was the only one who volunteered.
No, I volunteered Heather.
And, yes, I know. But when I got the email from Rhonda telling me, Rhonda, that you'd be interested, my heart leapt for joy because you bring so much excitement and enthusiasm and wisdom and brilliance to this to team. You've come to so many hikes on Sunday and Tuesday groups, and done your own personal work and become a master of team therapy, and now a great teacher. I'm just so happy to be working with you. Although my sadness at losing you, Fabrice, is pretty profound. You've been a kind of a mentor in a way. You've been a visionary. That this was once a glint in your eye. Is that the proper term? Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
And
or a gleam, or
yeah, and I
or
think
a speck.
yeah, I think back on our driveway I think it was after a Sunday hike or some such thing, and you were saying how about you thought about doing a podcast, and
Well,
I
before
hadn't.
I said that, what I was trying to do is trying to goad you into turning the ebook, which is essentially the manual for therapists, into a real book. And I know that you're big on efficiency, and you didn't feel like all the work that would be put into doing this would be that beneficial. I know that you like to broadcast your work a little bit more broadly than strictly to therapists, clinicians. And so you were kind of amming and awing about doing this, and it was going to be a lot of work. And I said, well, I have an alternative proposal for you. I said, we could do a podcast. And he said, what's that?
Right.
You had no idea what a podcast was when I brought it up.
What do you expect from an elderly old fart who's half demented? Who doesn't even own a cell phone?
So that's how it came. And so the initial intention was to make your material for clinicians available broadly, not just to people who come to your Tuesday group or even people who study with the Feeling Good Institute, but to anyone with access to the internet. And here we are more than 2 years later with 130 plus episodes, and people around the world listening to the podcast. Some people who are not clinicians whose lives have changed from learning your techniques, and many clinicians who also are now using your techniques and your model. It's mostly the model that's really important in their practices. So I think that the intention that I had in the beginning, and that you really agreed to, has been fulfilled. I'm ready to say, have a big banner behind me that says "Mission Accomplished."
Yeah. Well, I think we have, and really accomplished that mission. It would be fun to think about, talk a little bit about what your vision was for the show. You have all already, but I think partly you wanted to get a lot of the techniques, on different episodes on externalization of voices and feared fantasy and different things. And maybe we could mention too this new feature that I was able to create with the help of Angela Poch, P-O-C-H. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Another one of the team certified therapists who's been helping to get this gorgeous list of all of our podcasts. You can link to them directly now on the website feelinggood.com, and then there's a search function in the upper right hand corner of every page, and you can type in a word there like suicide or distortions or treatment of social anxiety or anything like that, and then all the links will come up automatically. So the show and my whole website now has become like a resource, both for patients and for and the general public and therapists as well. And
that's really the idea.
Yeah,
that's really the idea.
And that was your vision all along. And now that vision has become a reality, and it's just kind of mind-blowing. And you've been, not only a friend and a brilliant podcast host, but a visionary too. I'm wondering if you'd want to tip us off a little now, or we could do it later. You can come back and be a guest on our show when you're ready to launch your new podcast. But do you want to give us any teasers?
Right.
About...
So you're kind of like already divulging the secret here. I haven't said this yet, but I am planning to start a podcast. What got me started with this idea was when I was looking at our listenership around the world. Of course, a lot of our listenership is in English-speaking countries, but I was looking at the number of listeners in my native country of France, and they were pretty few. I think that it's hard to tell exactly how many, but it doesn't really number more than about 20 or so. And I think
come on now, I checked it out. We've got thousands of French fans, and we're going to become your new fans.
Okay, well, good. But they may be living outside of France. I don't know. But the fact is, I think that the language barrier is also a problem. And I thought about doing a podcast where I would go actually beyond team. There are many psychological principles that a lot of people are not aware of, and that I wanted to kind of talk about, and have like very focused episodes where, for example, I could focus on one particular kind of bias and see how it affects our decision making, or how it affects our relationships, and so on. So that's kind of like my idea, and I want to do this in French and in English. So I would have like two parallel podcasts where the episodes would be mirror image of each other, but one will be in French and one will be in English. So that's going to require a lot more work than I have been putting in the Feeling Good podcast, and so I really need some time to get this ramped up and plan for.
It sounds a little bit like it's going to be popularized psychology, popularized research showing how psychological findings are affecting our daily lives, our emotions, our relationships. And I think there's going to be a really huge market for that.
Well, I hope so, because what I've noticed is that sometimes in the popular press, you see, catchy titles saying things like, I don't know, I can't think of one about psychology right now, but scientists show that exercise and lower calorie diets lead to weight loss.
Yeah, right.
And then, when you look at the actual research, it's much more nuanced than this.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody is going to go to the original research to see what's really said in there. So I want to be able to bridge the gap here and to tell people in very, normal language what the research shows, without being overly dramatic about the results.
That's going to be great, and you're the guy to do it, because you've got the brain to see through the BS, and you've got the beautiful, articulate, clear way of talking to communicate that to people, to say nothing of your handsome good looks. And while we're at that, Lisa Kelly, who has helped us in the past and continues to help us and help me with public relations and promotion and marketing, which is so important if you want to get the word out. She sends you her love, Fabrice, her enormous adulation and admiration for you, and will continue to support you in your new endeavor once you decide to launch it, and continue to support Rhonda and David as well.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fabrice, I think your new podcast sounds so interesting, and one of the things that I've noticed throughout listening to the podcasts is, you have such a broad knowledge of psychological theories and various researchers, and I love when you make suggestions for people to read this or that book. So I just think that to further their knowledge about what you and David have been talking about. So I think the podcast you're talking about sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. I know that it's going to occupy quite a bit of my time, which is why I needed to kind of, divest from the Feeling Good podcast. What I'm interested in knowing is what you will be bringing to the podcast, Rhonda, and how is that going to change for our listeners? I know it's going to change for the better, so.
I don't think so. Fabrice, your shoes will be impossible to fill. I don't know how it'll. I think I'm going to bring.
It's going to be your shoes.
Yeah, I'll have my own shoes. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens.
One thing we're going to be doing, a tip off our listeners, I'm going to create a couple brief, simple polls on my website, and when they're ready, I'll mention them again in a podcast and put the links in the show notes. But Rhonda and I want to find out more who all of you people are, our listeners. Some of you may be therapists, or definitely therapists. Some of you are in the role of a patient and people looking for help. And some of you are in the, maybe just interested general citizens. And so we'd like to find out who you are and what kind of topics would be most exciting to you, because I've never really bothered to find out who our listeners are. I just assume there's a lot of therapists, a lot of patients, and a lot of general publics, but we don't have any data. So we'll be using that to guide us. And also, I guess we'll continue on the theme of presenting different parts of team therapy, methods and techniques. We certainly haven't presented all of that by a long shot. As well as just features of interest, I would say. One thing I want to ask you, Fabrice, looking back. Oh wait, I want to also mention too that it's because of you, Fabrice, that we got these new features for the podcast just a week ago. And I just want to emphasize that again to our listeners. If you go to my website, feelinggood.com, in the upper right-hand corner of every page now, there's a little search bar where you can type in one or word or phrase, and it'll immediately link you to all of the resources on that topic. So if you're a therapist and you want to give homework to your patient, say to learn about the 5 secrets of effective communication, you can type in 5 secrets there, and it'll show all of the podcasts, all of the blogs on that topic. So your patient can quickly find the information that you'd like him or her to be studying for homework. But
you have really become high tech over time. And I think this is for the better good of the listenership and the people who visit your website. It's also been for my own good, because I have really enhanced my own technical skills when it comes to audio publishing. And I'm by no means a professional at this, but I've learned quite a bit. And people can actually listen to episode 1. And then listen to one of our last real episodes and compare the two and notice that there's quite a bit difference.
Oh yeah. So,
Fabrice, did you know the technology before you started the podcast?
I had some ideas. I am a technologist by training, but not in audio and in computer science. But I knew some editing programs, and I had been listening to podcasts myself, and I tend to analyze when I hear, whether it's a podcast or like a radio show, and I notice how it gets constructed, where people put their intros, how they use the music, where they put advertising. Notice that we're not using advertising. I mean, the only kind of advertisement is for David's workshops. And that is by choice. We have had people approach us, especially now that our total number of downloads approaches 1 million. Advertisers are kind of interested in us. But the problem is when you take on an advertiser to sponsor your show, number one, you have to see whether the extra income is worth the time you spend on it. But also, you don't want to say something that upsets them. So you start censoring yourself about what you're talking about. So for the time being, there's no advertising because of that. But
plus, advertising is so annoying. You're listening to this beautiful topic, and it's so interesting, and then all of a sudden, advertising comes in.
Yes,
and it's distracting.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Yeah,
Mutual of Omaha.
Some life insurance company wanted to sponsor us. They were going to have special priced life insurance for people with healthy lifestyles, and so anyway, I don't think they thought it through very well, because when you're talking about an audience of people with depression, you're talking about also people who may be at increased risk to take their own lives, and it was kind of sad to think about that. And I'm really hopeful that our podcasts have saved some lives, and I get emails daily from people who say, boy, this podcast or one of my books, like Feeling Good, saved my life and changed my life. And also we get a lot of wonderful emails from therapists who say, this has really transformed my clinical practice and I'm so much more effective now. A question I had for you, Fabrice, is thinking back on the many shows we did, and I feel sad thinking about us sitting there at the Muriata Studios, as you called it, which was just the dining room in our house. And it was always so much fun. I was so excited when you were coming over. Oh, I wanted to mention, too, the quality today is a little lower on the sound. This is Zoom. This is the only way we could get together in time for our finale podcast. When Rhonda and I are working together, we'll almost always be working together in person with professional recording equipment. So we'll have slightly nicer sound.
Well, and that's the other reason, one more reason why I'm phasing off the Feeling Good podcast is because I used to live in Menlo Park, California, which is a short driving distance from your house, David. But now my partner and I are moving north to the Russian River, which is a beautiful rural area in wine country. But it's quite a distance away, and so that's not a commute that's going to be possible anymore. I will keep my ties to the Bay Area, but nonetheless, it's going to be a little bit more difficult logistically.
But what I was driving at there, thinking back on our work together, do you have any favorite show or shows or type of shows that come to mind?
Well, I was thinking about that, and it's not that I have any favorites, but I think that our listeners do have some favorites. And for one, the live session we did with Daisy.
Yes, right.
That seems to be an episode that people gravitate toward. So I would certainly recommend to our listeners, especially people who are new to the show, to go back and to listen to have several episodes of the live session with Daisy. We have broken it down into 3 episodes, if I recall correctly. And we ended up talking about the meaning of life. So I think this is a very important show. The other shows that I think are important for people who are new to this is to listen to the first 6 episodes where you and I go over all the components of the team model so that people know what we're talking about. And then finally, we have a few series where we go over the the anxiety model, which I think is quite interesting, and that really speaks to my own way of thinking about things. I like things that are organized in series, in sequence. So I like to point people to things that are planned in a way like this.
Well,
How about you? Do you have any favorite shows?
Well, I agree with everything you're saying. You gave us a nudge to make sure we do sequences, and we have a nice sequence coming up. I did a show on social anxiety featuring some of the interpersonal exposure techniques about, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 podcasts back. But now Rhonda and I have just completed Social Anxiety Part 1 and 2, 2 consecutive shows on the treatment of social anxiety. I've been getting tremendous emails from people who want help with social anxiety. But I think I agree with all of your assessments of favorite shows, and I would add the other live podcasts. The live therapy work, I think, are some of the most dramatic and important. I think the live therapy with Marilyn, the Part 1 we called The Dark Night of the Soul, that she had just been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and was just totally devastated, and it was Matt May was my co-therapist, and it was just an amazing session. It was a single session, and her negative feelings not only were reduced but completely blown out of the water, and it really spoke. First of all, it was inspiring, and I can't tell you how many people have emailed to say thank you to Marilyn. She's my hero. You're my hero, Marilyn. So many people have said that. And the dark night of the soul was that Marilyn found herself not only in depression, but darkness and rage, feeling that she'd lost her religious faith. And as she recovered, it was just a mind-blowing, transformative experience on so many different levels, but also spoke to the basic cognitive model that's been around for at least 2,000 years, and people still can't get it because it's so simple and they don't believe it. But the idea is that the events of our life could never affect the way you feel. A positive event will never make you happy, and a bad event will never make you angry or depressed or upset. Only your thoughts can change or affect the way you feel. And that session is just dramatic in illustrating this point, and also the point that when you're upset, the thoughts that cause depression and a loss of self-esteem and intense anxiety and rage, those thoughts are distorted. That depression, anxiety, and anger are the world's oldest cons, and that when you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. And the whole package is there in the sessions with Marilyn, but also the session with Mark, the live work, feeling a failure as a father. That was another just beautiful session, and Jill Levitt was my co-therapist, and Mark, now it's a couple of years later, and Mark would just love to do a follow-up podcast with us, which Rhonda knows, so people can see the impact of that session on his mood and his relationship with his son. And
well, David, I'm glad you're mentioning this, because people may not know this, but I've been urging you to do more live sessions, and I know that it's more work. Sometimes we can't publish them because people who do the sessions with us feel like they were talking about things that were too personal, so they don't want them broadcast. So it's true that it requires more energy, but the payoff is so great that I really urge you and Rhonda to try to make this happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same page with you on that. And Rhonda and I can do personal work too, and with people, and then see if we can have the permission to turn those into shows. But I have one now. I did a live demonstration in Edmonton, Canada, about 3 years ago that I had forgotten about, and it was a patient. Someone said, would you ever do a show on trauma? Well, this woman had severe trauma, and she was having extreme levels of anxiety, and and it was I treated her in a workshop, and it was just amazing. And she emailed me and said, "Can I have a copy of the video?" I promised it to her, and then I just forgot all about the whole thing. And I sent it to her, and she emailed back and said that the video is fantastic. And I said, "Well, could I use it for teaching?" And she said, "Absolutely." So I showed it to my Tuesday group recently, and they were just very moved by it. And I thought I think I might ask her if we could at least use the audio of that in a podcast, because again, she went from the most extreme anxiety that you could have from she really had post-traumatic stress disorder, and she went not only to no anxiety, but she went into jubilation. She went from sobbing on the video to just joyful laughter and ecstasy. And I think things like that are not only demonstrate the power of the new team CBT model, but and some people hate it when I say this, but I think those kinds of videos or audios, to hear it, live, real thing, it has incredible spiritual implications as well. It exists. The recovery is not just a psychological thing, but exists on a much deeper level. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I love team so much. I love therapy so much. Not only is it a joy when you can see people recover so quickly in a single session, is what I usually see. I almost always see complete recovery in one 90-minute or 2-hour session. And it's just so joyful.
Yeah. Well, Michael Pollan, who wrote a book recently called How to Change Your Mind, likes to define spirituality as turning away from the self, not realizing that our self is not an entity, and that we're much bigger than that. So that's the spiritual movement.
Well, we might have to get you back for another podcast as a guest on that topic, because I've been trying to write about it. People are getting all hot and bothered about the section in my new book on there is no such thing as a self, and people are getting ticked off at me and confused. They can't grasp it. But that's for another day.
Yeah, it's hard to explain.
Yeah, it really is.
So I think that we should probably stop blabbing about the show. People are maybe getting bored.
Yeah,
and maybe Rhonda, if you'd like to say something in closing. Before David announces some of his upcoming workshops.
Well, just in closing, I'd like to say I'm so extremely honored to be included on this journey with David. And Fabrice, I really want to wish you well. And it's as you go forth in your new journey, I wish you just much success and happiness and enlightenment. And I know you'll have a great impact on many of your new listeners, or the old listeners who are transferring over to you. So many blessings to you.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'll take that to heart, and I'll let you know when I'm enlightened.
Yeah, and my all I can say is thank you, dear friend, and I'm so sad to see you go, but I'm going to appreciate this fantastic gift you gave me, for the rest of my life, and we'll be thinking about you on every time we do a podcast. And when you're ready with your new podcast, let us know so we can just market the heck out of it and send all of your many.
I will let you know when I'm planning to launch it.
And your many fans, you got many fans listening right now who will be very sad. So if you want to email Fabrice again, his email will be at the bottom of the show notes at feelinggood.com, and I'm sure Fabrice would love to hear from you. Yeah. It's Fabrice@life.net, right?
That's what it is, yes.
So there you have it.
So before David, tell us a little bit about what's coming up for people who want to work with you.
Okay, well, first, I'm doing a workshop on May 19th with Dr. Jill Levitt, a one-day workshop.
May 19th, 2019.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. And it will be a step-by-step training for therapists on the treatment of anxiety disorders. It's already, although it's 2 months away as of this moment, It's already sold out in person and filling up fairly rapidly for the online. You can still get one of the online slots. There will be many helpers there to give you the same small group experiences online as the people who attend in person. But that's going to be a darn good one. And by the way, I just posted something today. I found a little video on my camera phobia. I think you have to practice what you preach, and I've had so many forms of anxiety. I sent out a little video at Lisa Kelly's suggestion that many of you may have gotten, but just talking, I can do it. See, you can't see me, but I can smile in front of the camera. I had that phobia since I was 6 years old until I was 76. So that might be fun for some of you. And then there's the 2 summer intensives, the Calgary, July 15 to 18, 2019, this year in July, in Calgary's sponsored by Jack Hiroshi and Associates. He's the guy I work with in Canada, and he puts on a fabulous show. And then July 29th to August 1st, 2019 will be, I think, the 8th or 9th annual South San Francisco 4-day intensive. This year it'll be sponsored by Praxis, Praxis, but you can find all of the links to these 3 upcoming workshops on my website, www.feelinggood.com. Feeling Good is one word with 2 G's in the middle, feelinggood.com. Just tick on the website tab, and there you'll find links to get more information about these 3 workshops. Well, Fabrice, my goodness.
It's a wrap, and it's been quite a ride. If I had a microphone to drop, I would do it, but I'll just say Fabrice out. So thank you, David, and thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, Fabrice.
Thanks, Fabrice.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.